There we go. Okay. I guess.
Just add that we have spoken to people who have been sacked that used to be in content moderation, and we've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech in the company. Is that
what hate speech are you talking about? I mean, you use Twitter,
right?
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
Yes.
But just a personal anecdote, like what do you? I don't.
Personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind.
Okay, so I don't think the interviewer should have answered this question, right? Like the interviewer shouldn't have answered that question because it's a non sequitur anyway. Is it too quiet now? So like somebody's personal experience doesn't dictate whether or not there has or has not been a rise overall, right? So, like, just because you're not personally experiencing it doesn't mean, like, the statistical number is more or less. I remember the first tweet underneath Elon Musk's tweet when he says he bought the bird, because that's what he said. Like, he made the announcement on Twitter that Elon Musk had bought Twitter was, I bought the bird. And the highest rated comment that popped up underneath that using Twitter's algorithm was like, okay, cool, so is it okay to say it now? Referring to the N-word. And then, like, we looked at this before. You look at there was, like, a huge spike in racial slurs and, like, just slurs in general being used on Twitter right after Elon Musk bought it. So, yes, there is absolutely an increase. Like, because the guy's answer is it doesn't matter, right? So I think the interviewer should not have answered this question. They should have just said a personal experience doesn't matter. We're talking about the overall statistics of Twitter usage, right? Simple as that. He put his hair plugs in too deep. Yeah, we're really gonna pretend that that's Elon Musk's actual hair? Like, we all know that that's not his hair, right? Some guy's anecdote versus the guy who's at the center of Twitter's functions. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you use Twitter,
Right?
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
Yes.
I mean,
but just a personal anecdote, like what do you? I don't.
Personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content. Yeah, personally, but I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
So you see more hate speech personally.
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful. What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that.
We all know what hate speech is, and Elon is pretending he doesn't know what the fuck hate speech is. As an advocate for free speech, like free speech absolutism, you would think that Elon Musk would know what hate speech is. But apparently, he's too big-brained to know what hate speech is or what hateful content would mean. Oh, does that mean content you just don't like? No, Elon, you're being obtuse on purpose. Disingenuous fuck.
Will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm saying.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content. And I'm asking.
Look at him wiggle around like a goober. Right, Honest Red is 100% right. The guy is saying there's been an increase in hateful content and hate speech on Twitter, and Elon went from hate speech to hateful content, and then from hateful content to if something is slightly racist or slightly sexist. He went with sexist specifically. Something is viewed as slightly sexist, it should be banned. And that is not the question at all. He's just like, boop, 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 boop.
Asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
You
don't.
can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it.
But you
And
said
actually,
you-
a lot of people are quite similar. I only
Well,
look at
hang on
my
a second.
following.
You said you've
my
seen
following.
more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
Well, then how did you see that hateful content?
Holy shit. He's trying to move the goalpost. He's trying to say that this guy can't come up with a single example because he stopped using it because of how bad it got. So he doesn't have one off the top of his head. Right? That's what he's trying to present, right? And like this, I don't know why this interviewer is backing off. Like, I feel like this interviewer should be stepping forward, right? This interviewer should be like, I stopped using it because it showed me nothing but racist, sexist garbage, and I don't commit racist and hateful shit to memory. And so I haven't used it in months. He should be pressuring this way, way more, and he's playing back foot for some fucking reason. Yeah, Elon asks for an anecdote, gets mad that he doesn't get a citation. Right, exactly. He's asking for different things, right? He's trying to befuddle the interviewer. He seems to be succeeding, so we'll see where this goes. Yeah, and he's just gonna keep kicking the ball down the. If he gives him an example, he's gonna kick the ball down the way, and he's gonna be like, okay, well, how is that, or why is that, or why is one example good enough, right?
Content.
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
Elon is really gonna sit here and pretend like there was so little hateful content on Twitter that it's non-existent. Like, bullshit position to take anyway. Like, he knows.
I say so that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really.
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one.
Ask for an anecdote, got an anecdote. Ask for an example, gets a vague example, not a specific example, then asks for a specific citation. Like, he wants a specific tweet on what date, yada, 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 yada. Now, I guess to be fair, the interviewer should probably just look at his phone and be like, okay, hold on 1 second. Boop. There you go. Look, there's one right there. It took me 30 seconds. I'd like to introduce you to Nick Fuentes. Right? Like, maybe the interviewer should have been better prepared for this kind of a pushback, but I don't know why this interviewer is taking this question as if he wasn't prepared for it and as if like he wasn't expecting it. And like this I mean, I don't know anything about this interviewer, but this is not the way I would handle this.
Tweet. And yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
that's false.
No, what I claimed.
You just lied.
What? No. What?
That's not a lie. There's a difference between the statistics and what this one dude is experiencing and what this one dude can remember off the top of the head. And Elon should fucking know this as the giant big brain he is. So who's the fucking liar here? Who's the one being dishonest here?
What I claimed was there are many organizations that say that that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed
one
or
example.
not, I mean, right, and
literally
you can
can't
look at
name
something
one.
like the
At this point, the interviewer should have just pulled up a statistic. Yeah, he's trying to gaslight him, and the interviewer's falling for it. Yeah, no, absolutely. The interviewer should have just started. He shouldn't have answered the question. Like, Elon baited him. He took the bait, and then instead of just pulling up a statistic and saying the statistics that these organizations are presenting here are, and he's like, give me an example. Here's the statistics.
Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK, they will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right, and as I already said, I don't use that feed. But
then how would you know that?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
that's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how would you know this hateful content?
Because he's reading the statistics at that point. He stopped looking, so there was hateful content, and he stopped using it because of the hateful content. And Elon's like, well, how do you know there's hateful content there? Absolute nonsense. This is rhetoric. This is rhetoric and nothing more. Elon, how about you present the statistics of what you think the amount or rise or less of hateful content is on the platform?
I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only have a certain amount of time. COVID misinformation. You changed the COVID misinformation
Has
rules.
BBC changed its COVID misinformation?
The BBC does not set the rules on Twitter, so I'm asking you.
No, I'm talking about the BBC's misinformation about COVID.
I'm literally asking you about, you changed the labels.
Did he just say the BBC changed its rules about misinformation as it relates to COVID? About the BBC's misinformation about COVID? What misinformation about COVID? Elon? If you want to go down that fucking route, what misinformation about COVID was on the BBC? Where's your statistics? Give me an example. Give me an anecdote. Oh, well now give me a specific citation. The interviewer could easily spin this around, but the interviewer's trying really hard to stay on topic, and Elon is stonewalling him. And this interviewer just does not know how. And again, yeah, it's whataboutism. Well, Twitter has changed this thing. Well, what about BBC's thing? We're talking about Twitter's thing. I mean, we can discuss this later if you want to have go for a beer after the fact and talk about BBC's rules and regulations that it uses to police itself around misinformation, but we can come back to that. So Twitter's changed this misinformation stuff. What the fuck is he talking about? Going full conspiracy theory.
The COVID misinformation labels, there used to be a policy, and then it disappeared. Why do that?
Well, COVID is no longer an issue. Does the BBC...
COVID is no longer an issue? How the fuck does that answer the question? You changed the tag of a label. It was a policy of Twitter to label misinformation. Why have you changed that? COVID is no longer an issue, question mark? How does that answer the question? I would also like to point out that, again, Twitter is under very strict and specific rules as in regards to FCC. The FCC has, stringently put Twitter on notice before Elon bought it to say that you guys need to be on top of this. And any policy changes need to go through the FCC. And Elon's just been changing policies left, right, and center. And I think he's just being a stubborn little bitch because he doesn't like that this guy's like, there's a rise in hate speech on your platform. And he is just like, well, the BBC and COVID. So he doesn't want to answer any fucking questions. What a fucking baby. Oh no, the smallest amount of foreseen criticism. Because, the guy didn't even criticize him yet. The guy just asked him about policy changes and about hate speech on his platform. He hasn't even actually presented any criticism yet. He's just asking why he would do that. Somebody called Jon Stewart, Jesus Christ.
Hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations, and not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure?
The COVID misinformation labels, there used to be a policy.
Oh, the COVID misinformation labels, for example, was the example he gave. That's why he went to COVID.
Well, COVID is no longer an issue. Does the BBC...
Even if COVID isn't let's pretend, right? Let's go with the hypothetical and say COVID no longer being an issue doesn't mean that there isn't still misinformation about it. It doesn't make misinformation about it any less needing to be labeled. What if he just answered a question?
COVID is no longer an issue. Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations, and not reporting on that at all?
What do you mean not reporting on that?
The BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy. Are you aware of that?
This is not an interview about the BBC.
Oh, you thought it wasn't?
I see now why you've done Twitter Spaces.
Why is he so fucking weird? Look at his body language. Why the fuck is Elon Musk so fucking weird? Like, his way of sitting, his, like, way of moving when he talks, it's so fucking uncomfortable. Ugh. Ugh. He's just trying to stonewall and flip it and not do the interview because he's a petulant fucking child.
I see now why you've done Twitter Spaces. I am not a representative of the BBC's editorial policy. I want to make that clear. Let's talk about something else. You want to talk about the BBC?
You too.
All right, let's talk about something else.
You weren't expecting that.
Let's talk about something else.
He's so fucking thinks he's like, I'm so sassy. Oh, what are you gonna fucking Christ? I don't want to watch this again on Tuesday. Holy shitballs! What a fucking big old baby! I want to see. Let's see. This is on the Joe Rogan subreddit. This is peak British comedy. BBC sending their best people. I see. Yeah, I don't think the interviewer did the best job. BBC reporter puts about as good of a fight as I would expect from an 18-year-old undergrad student. Yeah, this actually reads to me the same way as like Steven Crowder going to a college and being like, prove me wrong. Elon's brain is concentrated. I'm 14 and this is deep. Yeah, Twitter promotes hate speech. Changed my mind. Yes, somebody else noticed. The BBC have some of the best journalists in the world when it comes to putting these people in the hot seat. Not sure what happened here. Yeah, I would be curious. I'd be curious about, like, because I also don't know, like, who this guy is. Like, he did not do a good job. He didn't handle that very well at all. I don't know. Oh well. You'll win some, you lose some. Do better next time, I guess. People in the news industry and mainstream media wonder why, like, people don't trust them and go to YouTube instead.